From the air, the first thing you would notice is not a palace. It is water. A moat traces a vast brick wall. Canals leave the gates and cross fields beyond. Reservoirs hold the memory of the wet season inside one of mainland Southeast Asia's driest regions. These are the ancient Paiyu cities of central Myanmar, Halin, Beikthano and Sri Ksetra. Between roughly the 2nd century BCE and the 9th century CE, communities here built some of the region's earliest large, long-lived Buddhist urban settlements. But they were never merely temples inside walls. They were systems of water, food, craft, belief, trade, and human movement. To understand the Paiyu world, we must begin where its builders began, with the landscape. Central Myanmar lives by sharp seasonal contrasts. Rain can arrive intensely, then vanish for long months. A growing city could not depend on rainfall alone. Paiyu communities shaped channels, tanks, embankments, and moats to slow, guide and store water. This engineering supported organized agriculture and made dense settlement possible. Some parts of those water landscapes still influence farming today. That continuity is easy to overlook because canals are less dramatic than stupas. Yet every brick monument depended on harvests, and every harvest depended on people maintaining gates and banks together. Water management was therefore not background infrastructure. It was a social agreement renewed season after season. Halin, Beikthano and Sri Ksetra are often grouped under one label, but they were not three copies of a single capital. Their histories overlapped, and each preserves a different part of a long urban sequence. Beikthano reveals early experiments in walled planning and brick religious architecture. Halin connects city life with salt production, agriculture, and northern roots. Sri Ksetra grew into the largest and most monumental of the three. UNESCO treats them as one serial World Heritage property because, together, they show transformation across many centuries. The useful image is a family of cities related through language, practice, and exchange, yet changing at different speeds and answering different local conditions. A massive wall can look like a declaration of isolation. In a Paiyu city, the gates tell another story. Roads and canals passed through them, linking neighborhoods inside with farms, workshops, monasteries, and burial grounds outside. The urban footprint was extended rather than packed tightly into one monumental core. Near the center stood an administrative compound, but religious buildings and working landscapes spread across a much wider zone. Gates controlled movement, certainly. They could protect, tax and display authority. But they also concentrated encounters. Farmers, officials, monks, craftspeople and travelers crossed the same threshold. The wall defined the city while its openings kept the city alive. Almost 2,000 years ago, sustained contact with cultures of South Asia helped Buddhism gain an early permanent foothold in mainland Southeast Asia. The Paiyu did not simply import a finished civilization. They selected, translated, and reinvented. Monastic communities became centers of teaching and literacy. Rulers and ordinary patrons supported permanent brick stupas and ritual buildings. Pali-based traditions circulated through the region, but local architecture developed forms with no exact prototype elsewhere. This is the difference between influence and imitation. Ideas travel, then people make them local. In the Paiyu cities, religious change unfolded beside changes in farming, administration, and urban life. Belief became part of how a city organized time, labor, memory, and generosity. Literacy left small but powerful traces. Inscriptions appear in the Paiyu script, while Pali carried Buddhist teaching. Most writing was made on fragile materials that did not survive tropical centuries. Stone, metal, and fired clay preserve only fragments. That imbalance matters. Archaeology can make a society look more silent than it was. Centuries later, the Myazidi inscription at Bagan placed Paiyu beside Mon, Myanmar, and Pali, evidence that the language still held meaning in a changing political world. Writing did more than record royal names. It supported ritual, donations, learning, and administration. Every surviving line hints at libraries, recitations, and everyday documents now lost, an archive whose absence we must learn to imagine carefully. A city of brick required more than a brilliant architect. Clay had to be selected, molded, dried, fired and moved in enormous quantities. Iron tools shaped timber and soil. Terracotta vessels stored food and water. Gold, silver, and semi-precious stones became offerings, ornaments and traded goods. Archaeological production areas reveal specialized work rather than a population occupied only with farming. Skill created interdependence. A metalworker needed fuel, a mason needed carts, a monastery needed donors, a ruler needed all of them. Monumental architecture can hide this network by leaving one finished object in view. The real achievement was coordination, the ability to keep knowledge, materials, and people moving through the city. The Paiyu cities stood inland, but they were not isolated. River and overland routes linked the Irrawaddy Basin with commercial centers in India, China, and Southeast Asia. Beads, ceramics, metals, textiles, and religious objects moved through many hands. So did stories, scripts, measurements, and techniques. Trade did not require every merchant to travel from one end of Asia to the other. Networks worked in stages, through trusted partners and seasonal journeys. An imported object found at Sri Ksetra does not prove foreign control. It proves connection and local choice. Someone valued it, carried it, copied it, or placed it in a meaningful context. The Paiyu world was cosmopolitan because people translated distant things into local lives. Paiyu mortuary practice offers an intimate counterpoint to walls and trade. Cremated remains were placed in burial urns, sometimes gathered in communal funerary structures. The vessels vary, suggesting distinctions of time, community, and status, but their meaning cannot be reduced to a catalogue. A burial is an action performed by the living. It locates memory, expresses relationship, and decides what travels with the dead. Archaeologists learn from the urn, its position, and the objects around it. Remove one from context, and the most important evidence disappears. These burials remind us that the Paiyu city was not only an engine for production. It was a landscape of ancestors, where urban identity extended across generations. Modern maps encourage us to color the Paiyu world as one solid territory. The evidence does not demand that picture. Paiyu-speaking city-states shared practices and interacted, but political authority could shift between centers and across time. Walls, inscriptions, and prestigious objects reveal organization. They do not automatically reveal one ruler governing every settlement. The term kingdom can be useful, yet it can also make a changing network look too neat. A better model is layered: local communities, urban centers, religious institutions, trading relationships, and competing elites. Their connections were real without becoming a modern nation-state. Complexity is not a gap in the story. It is the story. By the 9th century, the old urban pattern was changing. Later chronicles connect this period with conflict and the movement of Nanzhao forces from the north, but collapse should not be imagined as one dramatic night when every gate closed. People remained. Settlements continued into the pagan era. Languages, Buddhist practices, craft knowledge, and water systems were absorbed into new political arrangements. Cities can lose central power without their populations vanishing. The Paiyu legacy is therefore not a ruined world replaced by Bagan. It is part of the foundation from which later Myanmar history grew. Continuity often survives where royal lists encourage us to see only dynasties. At the three sites, the past is not sealed beneath glass. Farmers still work landscapes shaped by ancient water management. Buddhist monuments remain places of veneration and pilgrimage. Archaeological conservation must therefore protect more than exposed brick. It must consider villages, agriculture, sacred practice, tourism, and the fragile contexts of unexcavated remains. UNESCO's inscription in 2014 made the Paiyu ancient cities Myanmar's first World Heritage property. Recognition can bring attention and resources, but it also brings pressure. A living heritage site needs room for research, worship, and ordinary life. The city survives best when the people around it are treated as partners, not scenery. Return to that aerial view. Begin outside the wall, where water enters a field. Follow the canal toward a gate, then the road past a workshop, a monastery, and an administrative compound. The Paiyu city becomes legible only when these parts remain connected. It was built around water, but also around cooperation, growers feeding craftspeople, patrons supporting monks, traders carrying ideas, and families placing memory into clay urns. Halin, Beikthano, and Sri Ksetra do not give us one frozen capital. They preserve a 1,000-year experiment in urban life. Which system would you explore first, the canals, the workshops, the inscriptions, or the burial grounds? Tell us below, and subscribe to Monsoon Archives for the next story hidden in Southeast Asia's landscape.